Complex problems of the theory of technical operation of transport. Lecture plan. General regularity of development of utilization of technical means and various modes of transport. The nature of movement against permissible maneuverability, permissible loading, unevenness of the road, and the slope taken on board. Technical support of the transport process is set up. Necessary equipment, production facilities, so on. Designed to support the transport process, the concept of transport process is used to refer to the proper functioning of transport within a region or country to meet the transportation needs of the state. The quality of the transport process depends on the level of technology, organization, and management. Transport. The word transport is used in different meanings. Typical concepts are the field of agriculture, the transportation of goods and passengers, a set of technical means that provide the movement of material, products, and people, flow of units moving along a road or street, a separate batch of goods directed to a specific point with a specific address, a type of activity or profession of a person, transport system, a complex of different types of transport that are in contact and interact with each other during transportation. The term transport system is used in relation to a state, region, or major city. The concept of unified transport system reflects the socio-economic unity of all types of transport. The transport network is a set of communication routes connecting localities in a country or remote regions. From the point of view of the state, it is better to use the term single transport network. From a technical and economic point of view, the transport network is one of the most important elements that characterize the level of potential transport services of a particular region or a state as a whole. Transport forms a large system consisting of two branches in terms of structure: public transport and non-public transport. Public transport is obliged to carry out the transportation of goods and passengers, regardless of whether they are provided by the state, firm, or individuals. Non-public transport carries out the transportation of products of a particular enterprise, institution, or firm within the territory of production. Non-public transport is called industrial transport. The basis of the national transport system is generally used vehicles. It is the transport industry that provides all the basic needs of the country in transportation. So commonly used vehicles include the following: railway transport within the competence of the Ministry of Road Relations, maritime transport under the jurisdiction of Ministry of the Navy, river transport under the jurisdiction of the main departments of the Republican Ministries of the River Fleet or Councils of Ministers of the Republican Ministries. Construction and operation of motor transport and related highways, or motor transport within the competence of the main department of the Councils of Ministries of the Republic. Air transport under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Civil Aviation. All types of urban public buildings under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Transport. General use transport is grouped into universal, internal, external, round the clock, and shift, as well as specialized. Universal transport is transport that can carry out almost all types of transportation, cargo and passenger. Non-universal transport is specialized or specialized transport intended for performing only one type of transport or for transporting only one type of cargo, for example, liquids. Discrete transport, any transport that transports items through individual batches or groups on networks by means of independent movement of transport units, cars, trains, ships, planes, and so on. Continuous transport, transport that transports transportation objects in the form of a continuous stream by means of various flexible belts, grinders, escalators, and so on, as well as pipelines. There are structures that combine the principles of discrete and continuous motion. These include rope tracks with containers attached to the tow rope, as well as burrows where buckets are attached to sliding chains. However, these structures belong to a continuous mode of transport. Since cargo passengers containers do not have relatively free movement to each other, BCS, consisting of a complex set of developed subsystems on a wide scale, allows us to increase the regularity and convenience of providing the national economy in the transportation of goods and people. Effectively use the transportability of communication routes, as well as increase the operational efficiency of networks, reduce the number of service personnel. Currently, each vehicle is used with its own characteristics, taking into account the indicators in its own system. However, there is a set of indicators that are common for all models of transport. These indicators include volume, quality, availability of transport, and its capabilities. Sea and river transport is an important component of the economy of the Republic of Kazakhstan. The essence of transport is determined by its role in the regional distribution of public labor. The specialization of districts and their complex development is impossible without a transport system. The transport factor affects the location of production. It is impossible to achieve an effective deployment of productive forces without taking it into account. In accordance with the technological progress, transport is becoming of great social importance. It is reflected in the simplification of human labor spent on production and marriage. Transport provides an opportunity for public health, that is, for people to make extensive use of natural resources within nearby remote treatment areas of the country for recreation and sports. Healing mineral springs and sanatoriums also provide access to various special healing sites for the prevention of and control of disease. Especially the cultural significance of transport is special. All this has had a great impact and influence on the level of culture of people, including written works, films, exchange, sending works of art for organizing exhibitions, access to major scientific and cultural centers of the country, and museums, libraries, theaters of foreign countries. The growth rate of science and culture of people consists in the interaction of scientists, writers, artists, and business trips to competitions, conferences, exhibitions, and so on. Radio and television had a great influence on the spread of culture in the second half of the 20th century. However, transport is one of the most important factors in this area, and the transport ships of the fleet have also been used in military operations since ancient times. During the Great Patriotic War, transport did a lot of work in the transportation of troops, weapons, supply cargo, rescue people, and material and technical resources. Modern vehicles are an organic part of many types of military weapons. Transport also affects the concentration of production. With consolidating production, it is important to determine the acceptable criteria of the enterprise. From this depends the level of labor costs and the cost of production. An increase in the capacity of the enterprise leads to a decrease in this level. When consolidating production, the set of cost of production and transportation of production is determined. For example, from increasing the transportation distance of turf are higher than savings obtained from reducing the cost of electricity. In the context of market relation, the consolidation of production has reached a new stage. The complex of enterprises is being created in regional production complexes. One region with common auxiliary production facilities, engineering structures, and communications, social and cultural facilities. For example, regional production complexes. Transport has a great influence on the concentration of agricultural production. For the concentration of agricultural production, it is important to use a complex of railways and motor vehicles that provide material and technical equipment. In determining acceptable boundaries in the specialization of production, it is mandatory to take into account transport identification. The savings obtained from the reducing production cost at specialized enterprise do not exceed the additional transportation cost for transporting the products of this enterprise, then this specialization is considered effective. When combining production, transport costs should be taken into account. The merger is economically profitable if the savings obtained from reducing the production costs of joint ventures are greater than the additional cost of transportation. Transport also has an impact on mixed industries, that is, the integration of different industries into one enterprise, which is characterized by production and regional unity. By determining the product distribution area, the transport system affects the location and scale of the plant. In agriculture, unlike industry, the specialization of production is not related to the division of enterprises or industries that produce a particular product. The essence of the profession is development of industries with favorable conditions. When placed in production, the need for transportation, the mass of materials and finished products, their transportability, availability of transport routes, their throughout capacity, so on, are taken into account. Depending on their impact, options for the placement of the enterprise are considered. The rationality of transportation affects the efficiency of production. Specifics of transport, its product is transportation. People and goods moved by any type of transport, but providing production with raw materials, equipment, and delivering finished products to the consumer. Transport implements its production processing generates transportation costs during this process. Transportation costs are included in the cost of production. Reducing and accounting for transport costs is a prerequisite for the rational placement of productive forces. Extractive industrial enterprises mining, oil producing, coal, raw material deposits are located in close proximity, determining the effective sequence of implementation of the field for professional development and rational production rates. Taking into account transport, it is more difficult to take into account the impact of transport when placing enterprises and processing industry. As rule, three options are considered. The mass of raw materials and fuel is greater than the mass of the finished product. The mass of the finished product is greater than the mass of raw materials and fuel. The mass of raw materials and fuel is equal to the mass of the finished product. With the same transportation of raw materials and fuel, the choice of raw materials or fuel base is caused by the fact that the mass of any component of production is greater. For example, in the production of sugar, the consumption of raw materials is 5-6 times higher than the consumption of fuel, and the production of cement, this ratio is even higher. It places enterprises of such industries close to the raw materials base. Lead, copper, nickel, so on places enterprises of energy-intensive industries close to the energy base. If the mass of the finished product is greater than that of raw materials and fuel products, then it is better to place enterprises in the areas of product consumption. In the context of the transition to market relation, the role of transport will increase significantly. On the one hand, the efficiency of the enterprise depends on the transport factor, which is directly related to the possibility of its functioning in market conditions. And on the other hand, the essence of the market is the exchange of goods and services that is impossible without transport. Therefore, transport is an important part of the infrastructure. Thank you for your attention.